when I was in college, I started to actually encounter other places. And then I made a decision early in my life that I wasn't going to spend money on things that I didn't really need, like a car and that kind of stuff, right? But I would spend money on experiences. And so I dedicated myself to having lots of experiences and taking myself places that most people wouldn't go, and to have the experiences that most people wouldn't have. And I was a sociologist, right? So I started to really, I don't know, things just, the more I would encounter people who I thought they were going to be one way and they turned out to be another way, or I encounter places that I expected to be like a certain way and I found them to be very different, the more I had those experiences, the more I kept wanting more. It's like a drug, you know, you just sort of want to keep going and have more and more and see more. And the more I had them, the more I realized that the world was not as I thought it was. And in fact, often it was the exact opposite of what I thought it was. And I bring that back to my teaching a lot. In fact, years ago in the 80s, there was a war going on in Nicaragua. And I was walking through this little town. I hitchhiked from the border of Costa Rica, and this guy, who was actually one of the teammates, the teammates of Roberto Clemente, if you're a Pittsburgh person, you know who that is. And so he was a good friend of Clemente's, and so we had this really cool ride across Nicaragua, him telling me stories and stuff, you know, and it's just like the stuff you get. And then he dropped me off in this little town where I was going, because I was delivering some medicines to a Guatemalan refugee community. And so So I get out, and I needed a place to stay, and I'm walking down this road, and I see this old woman sitting on her porch, and the front is blown off of her house. And so she says, "Oye, gringo, ¿dónde vas?" Right? Like, gringo, where are you going? And I said, I'm going down. I don't know where I'm going, actually. I'm looking for a place to stay. So we started talking, and she told me the story of what happened to her house in the war. And as I listened to her story and just her life, and she said, you know, so what are you doing? Like, what do you do? And I said, well, you know, I'm going to teach. I'll be a teacher, I suppose. I didn't know what else I was going to do. And so I said, well, she said, listen, when you go back and teach, you need to teach your students about things like this. Like, what happened to me? You need to teach your students about things around the world, because students, young people need to know this, right? And so it started pretty early that I started to have these kinds of experiences, that I just had the opportunity to be empathic, you know, like to put myself in the shoes of other people, like really put myself in the shoes of other people, like this woman.